Hello, esteemed gentlemen. Power recognizes power long before words are spoken. That's not just poetry, it's biology. Science has shown that within 39 milliseconds, the human brain can detect dominance cues in another person's face. Now imagine what happens when a Sigma male, a man who thrives outside hierarchies, suddenly collides with someone cut from the same rare cloth. This isn't a handshake, it's a silent earthquake. Most men spend their lives flexing for validation. But when two Sigmas lock eyes, there's no performance, no barking, no need for applause. What happens instead is a subtle duel of presence, two predators circling, measuring, calculating, without ever raising their voices. And here's the kicker. The rest of the world usually doesn't even notice the storm brewing in the stillness. It's like watching two master chess players sit at a table. Outsiders see a couple of guys moving wood. Insiders know an entire war is unfolding in silence. That's what it feels like when a Sigma male meets his equal, raw recognition without theatrics, and tension sharp enough to slice through air. So buckle up, because this isn't your average story of friendship, rivalry, or dominance. This is what happens when the unstoppable force finally meets the immovable object, and neither is willing to blink first. Number 1. The inevitable separation. The truth about two Sigma males meeting is that it almost always ends in separation, and not because of hate, betrayal, or ego. It's because both of them are wired to walk their own road, and the collision is never meant to be permanent. A Sigma doesn't crave company, not even from his equal. What he values most is his autonomy, and when another Sigma enters the frame, that independence is suddenly mirrored back at him. It's powerful, it's rare, but it's also a reminder that his life was never designed for long-term partnerships. When they meet, there's mutual respect, even admiration for the intelligence, strategy, and depth they see in one another. But respect doesn't rewrite their DNA. Each one has his own obsessions, his own path, and his own battles that no one else can fully carry. They may share conversations that others could never decode, trade secrets nobody else is worthy of hearing, or even form a bond that feels unshakable in the moment. Yet deep down, both know the clock is ticking. They are lone wolves by design, and wolves don't run in twos. They drift, they move, they disappear. What makes their separation different from ordinary friendships breaking down is the lack of bitterness. There's no betrayal, no shouting match, no accusations. It's more like a silent agreement, an unspoken understanding that says, we met, we sharpened each other, we left. And in that leaving, there's no weakness. It's a kind of respect for destiny itself. Neither Sigma clings, because clinging is dependency, and dependency is poison to their nature. Ironically, the separation often leaves both men changed. A Sigma rarely meets someone who can match his intensity, so the experience lingers. He may adopt something from his equal, a sharper discipline, a different way of reading people, a deeper awareness of his own blind spots. But he won't stay, because staying would dilute who he is. He walks away carrying what he needs, and so does the other. That's the beauty and the tragedy. When two Sigmas meet, it's unforgettable, but it's never forever. It's lightning striking twice, only to vanish into the night. Number 2. Dangerous levels of understanding. When a Sigma male meets his equal, the most unsettling part isn't rivalry, it's recognition. He suddenly finds himself in front of someone who can see straight through the very tactics that have protected him for years. The carefully controlled silences, the subtle shifts in body language, and the deliberate disappearances, things that confuse most people, don't work here. His equal notices them instantly, not because he studied a textbook, but because he lives by the same code. That level of understanding is dangerous because it strips away the Sigma's strongest weapon, invisibility. For the first time, he realizes his camouflage has limits. The pauses that usually buy him time become obvious stalling tactics. The sharp, calculated way he controls conversations is no longer smooth, but transparent. Even the way he withdraws to regain strength is recognized for exactly what it is. Not indifference, but a deliberate retreat to re-strategize. That awareness unsettles him, because it means someone else holds the map to his inner workings. But here's where it gets twisted. It's not just threatening, it's magnetic. There's a strange respect that comes with being seen this clearly. Most people misunderstand sigmas, mislabel them, or misinterpret their quiet strength. Meeting someone who doesn't need translation feels rare, almost refreshing. Yet it comes at a cost. If the other man can read him this well, then betrayal or competition would cut sharper than anything he's ever faced. That's where paranoia creeps in. This duality, respect mixed with suspicion, creates an intense psychological tension. On one hand, he values the honesty of being understood without masks. On the other, he fears the vulnerability that comes with such exposure. It's like handing someone the keys to a vault and hoping they don't decide to open it. What emerges isn't a simple friendship or rivalry, but a fragile balance of trust and caution. They may cooperate, but neither forgets the fact that the other can strike without warning, simply because he knows exactly where the weak spots are. And that's what makes this level of understanding so dangerous. It turns two lone strategists into mirrors, forcing each one to confront the uncomfortable truth. You can't manipulate the man who already knows the game. Number 3. A clash without collision. When two Sigma males meet, the clash isn't about fists, raised voices, or dramatic scenes. It happens in silence, in subtle exchanges, and in the tension of unspoken challenges. Both understand that physical confrontation is a waste. It proves nothing except a lack of control. The real battleground lies in the mind, where every word, pause, and gesture becomes a move in a quiet war. The intellectual clash comes first. Each Sigma is used to being the sharpest observer in the room, the one who sees angles others miss. But now his observations are met with equal precision. Conversations become layered with double meanings, probing questions and statements designed to test boundaries. It's not small talk, it's strategic fencing with language. Neither raises his voice, but both sharpen their blades of wit, seeing who can cut deeper without breaking composure. Then there's the moral battlefield. Sigma males may reject traditional hierarchies, but they live by personal codes. When two of them meet, those codes can align or collide. One may prize freedom above loyalty, while the other values principle above flexibility. These aren't debates that end with a handshake. They're silent standoffs, where each man measures the other's integrity against his own. Winning isn't about convincing. It's about proving consistency. The strategic clash is the most dangerous. Both men are planners, long-game thinkers who rely on subtle moves that most people never notice. But in this meeting, every strategy is anticipated, every angle countered. There's no easy dominance because neither is predictable. This creates a kind of stalemate where both know they're dealing with an opponent who doesn't just play the game, but rewrites it. What makes this clash unique is its restraint. There's no chest beating, no dramatic showdown to impress an audience. That kind of display belongs to alphas who need attention to validate their power. Sigmas don't. Their battle is invisible to outsiders, but brutal to those engaged in it. It's a war of recognition where each one silently admits, "You are not ordinary, and I can't dismiss you." And that's why it's called a clash without collision. No fists fly, but the impact is seismic. The confrontation leaves both changed, not bruised, but sharpened, like steel forged in the heat of resistance. Number 4, the predator instinct locks eyes. When two Sigma males lock eyes, it isn't a casual glance. It's something primal, almost biological, that cuts deeper than social politeness. Most men instinctively look away when eye contact lasts too long because they feel threatened, or because they're subconsciously conceding space. But Sigmas don't play that game. They're not intimidated, and they're not looking to submit. Instead, when their eyes meet, neither flinches, neither shifts, neither yields. That one extra second of locked focus sends an unmistakable signal. Another apex predator has entered the same territory. What makes this moment so electric is that it isn't fueled by aggression. Aggression is noisy, desperate, and often sloppy. This is something sharper, quieter, and far more unsettling. It's pure recognition. Both men instinctively know they're standing in front of someone who carries the same instincts, the same calculated detachment, and the same refusal to be dominated. It's not about ego, it's about survival wiring. Predators always recognize predators. The silence of that locked gaze is what makes it powerful. Words aren't needed because the exchange isn't verbal. It's instinctual. It's an acknowledgement that says, I see you, and I know what you are. And in that tiny, stretched moment, a hierarchy doesn't form. Instead, equilibrium does. Neither man bows, but neither man escalates. They simply measure each other in silence, and that measurement lingers even after the eye contact breaks. This kind of unspoken recognition creates both tension and respect. It's tense because each Sigma knows the other is not an easy man to manipulate, outwit, or ignore. Yet it's also respectful, because they both understand how rare it is to encounter someone who carries the same unshakable core. To the outside world, it looks like nothing more than two men glancing briefly, but within that stare is a dialogue more potent than 1,000 conversations. That's the predator instinct at work, not hostile, not submissive, but alert and unyielding. It's not two egos colliding, it's two forces acknowledging one another's existence without blinking. And in the Sigma world, holding that stare for just a fraction longer is more revealing and more dangerous than any spoken challenge could ever be. Number 5. Respect comes before friendship. For Sigma males, friendship is never the starting point. It's the result of something much heavier, respect. When two of them meet, there's no quick leap into brotherhood, no instant bonding over surface-level similarities, and definitely no forced camaraderie. They don't hand out respect like freebies, because in their world, respect is the only currency that actually matters. If it isn't earned, it isn't real, and without it, there's no foundation to build on, no trust, no rivalry, and not even the faintest interest. This is what separates them from most men. Many people confuse friendliness with loyalty, or mistake shared hobbies for genuine connection. A Sigma doesn't operate that way. His friendships aren't built on convenience, they're built on principle. When he meets his equal, the first instinct isn't to embrace, it's to test. These tests aren't obvious. They happen quietly, in words, in silences, in the choices each man makes when no one's watching. Does he stand firm when it matters, or does he bend for comfort? Does he speak with conviction, or does he trade authenticity for approval? These are the subtle battles being observed long before a bond is even considered. The paradox is that neither Sigma is desperate to win the other over. There's no people-pleasing, no sales pitch. They simply watch and weigh. That's why their interactions are often tense at the start. It feels less like a conversation and more like two men running background checks on each other's souls. Respect isn't demanded, it's uncovered piece by piece through the consistency of action. When respect is finally established, something rare happens. A door opens, not wide, but just enough for genuine trust to exist. And when two Sigmas actually respect one another, the bond is unlike any other because it isn't dependent on convenience, flattery, or constant presence. It's rooted in principle. Yet if that respect never forms, the relationship doesn't crash dramatically. It simply fades into indifference. Neither fights for it, because without respect, there was never anything to fight for in the first place. That's why respect comes before friendship in the Sigma world. Friendship may follow, rivalry may even spark, but without respect as the bedrock, there is nothing, and both of them know it. Number 6. Trust becomes a dangerous gamble. Trust between two Sigma males is never casual. It's a dangerous gamble, one where the stakes are far higher than with anyone else. Both of them know that trust isn't just about sharing secrets or relying on someone. It's about lowering the defenses that have kept them untouchable for years. And when the man standing across from you is your equal, someone who understands your tactics and can dissect your moves, that gamble feels like handing over a loaded weapon and hoping it doesn't get turned against you. What makes trust so risky here is the depth of the potential betrayal. A Sigma doesn't fear being backstabbed by ordinary people. He expects it, and he's built layers of armor against it. But betrayal from an equal, that's a wound that doesn't heal. It cuts through the pride, the self-sufficiency, and the carefully guarded solitude that defines him. Because only someone who stands on the same level has the knowledge and precision to strike where it really hurts. And that's why every conversation about partnership, cooperation, or shared strategy comes with tension heavy enough to choke the air. Still, the paradox is that Sigmas do occasionally gamble on trust, but never recklessly. They measure, They test. They watch for consistency, integrity, and the smallest cracks in character. Trust isn't given all at once. It's extended in fragments, cautiously, almost reluctantly. And even then, part of the Sigma mind remains on guard, ready to retreat if the ground starts to shift. This makes their alliances rare, fragile, and incredibly powerful when they do happen. If two Sigmas manage to trust each other, the bond is sharp and efficient, because it's rooted in necessity, not sentimentality. But that same bond is always shadowed by the awareness that one wrong move could destroy it completely. The gamble of trust, then, isn't just about risk, it's about cost. A betrayal from 10 enemies might sting, but betrayal from an equal can dismantle an entire worldview. That's why Sigma males treat trust like nitroglycerin, useful, explosive, and too dangerous to handle carelessly. And the tension never disappears, even when cooperation becomes inevitable. Number 7. Recognition without admiration. When two Sigma males meet, admiration is never on the table. They don't pedestal each other, they don't glorify one another's achievements, and they don't slip into the worship dynamics you see in typical hierarchies. What they offer instead is recognition. It's blunt, unsentimental, and stripped of flattery. One Sigma looks at the other and silently admits, "You're not beneath me, you're not above me. You're the kind of competition I can't ignore." This recognition is powerful because it carries weight without attachment. For a Sigma, most people are background noise, easily read, easily dismissed. Very few individuals hold the ability to disrupt his rhythm or challenge his strategies. But when he encounters his equal, suddenly there's someone who won't be swayed, won't be manipulated, and won't be outpaced. That realization flips a switch. It doesn't inspire admiration, it sparks awareness. This man is not a follower, not a leader to be resisted, but a force that demands sharper edges. The dynamic is less about friendship and more about pressure. Each Sigma understands that stagnation is the enemy. Alone, they're already self-driven, but meeting someone equally relentless introduces a new variable. Now they can't afford to coast. They watch each other, not in envy, but as mirrors of possibility, proof that their own strategies can be refined, tightened, or expanded. It's a rivalry that doesn't require hostility, but it does demand evolution. The absence of admiration also prevents weakness. Admiration often softens judgment, making people overlook flaws in those they look up to. Sigmas don't play that game. They recognize the brilliance, but they also recognize the blind spots, the contradictions, and the cracks in the armor. They see the whole picture, not just the highlight reel. And that level of clear-eyed recognition makes their interaction brutally honest. What emerges is a strange equilibrium. Neither man feels the need to outshine for validation, but neither allows himself to slip into complacency. The other's existence alone is enough to push him further. It's not about applause, it's about pressure. Not admiration, but recognition. And in the Sigma world, recognition carries far more power than praise ever could. Number 8. Alliances built on need, not want. When two Sigma males form an alliance, it's never born out of sentiment or idle companionship. They don't look at each other and think, "I like you, let's be friends." That kind of shallow bonding belongs to men who need constant validation or belonging. For Sigmas, the only reason to join forces is because there's a mission, a goal, or a pressing outcome that requires it. The alliance isn't emotional, it's functional. It exists because it has to, not because they crave it. This is why their cooperation feels different from most relationships. There's no unnecessary flattery, no effort to keep the bond warm, no shallow gestures to prove loyalty. They strip it down to the bare bones. What's the objective, and how do we get there? Once the mission is clear, the cooperation becomes sharp, efficient, almost surgical. There's no wasted motion, no distraction, no drama. And that's the beauty of it. When they work together, they're lethal because neither is slowed down by ego or emotion. But this also makes their alliance fragile. Once the need is gone, the bond dissolves. They don't cling, they don't mourn, they don't keep replaying memories. The connection served its purpose, and that's enough. To outsiders, this can look cold, even heartless. But for Sigmas, it's simply honesty. Pretending that an alliance is permanent just to soothe feelings would be a lie. and they don't trade in lies. What makes this dynamic powerful is the clarity it brings. Both men know exactly why they're cooperating, and that transparency eliminates confusion. There's no guessing where the other stands, no hidden emotional debts waiting to be cashed in later. It's straightforward. We needed each other, we delivered, we move on. Ironically, this lack of emotional baggage is what sometimes makes their short-lived alliances stronger than friendships built on loyalty. Because when two Sigmas join forces out of necessity, they operate with pure focus, undistracted by the noise that consumes most partnerships. It's temporary, yes, but it's also unshakable while it lasts. And that's the truth of Sigma alliances. They are never about want, only about need, and that's exactly what keeps them razor-sharp. Number 9. The mutual refusal to submit. When two Sigma males cross paths, the idea of one submitting to the other doesn't even register as an option. Submission is the language of hierarchies, and Sigmas live outside of that system. They don't bow to alphas, they don't dominate betas, and they certainly don't expect surrender from someone who carries the same uncompromising spirit. What happens instead is something far more complex, a fragile equilibrium where both stand tall, refusing to shrink, yet careful not to push the other into a pointless war. This mutual refusal creates a tension that's almost electric. Neither tries to overpower the other, but neither steps back either. It's not arrogance, it's identity. For a Sigma, bending is equivalent to betrayal of self, and both of them know it. If one were to submit, even in the smallest way, it would strip away everything that makes him who he is. That's why, instead of a hierarchy forming, they arrive at a kind of silent pact. We won't kneel, but we won't collide. The balance is fragile, because it relies on constant respect. One misstep, one sign of overreach, and the equilibrium shatters. Neither Sigma tolerates being pushed, even by his equal. But as long as the boundaries are honored, the balance holds, and it creates something rare. Two strong presences coexisting without conflict. Outsiders often can't understand this dynamic. They expect dominance games, power struggles, or one man eventually yielding. But Sigmas don't waste energy on that. They conserve their fire for things that matter. The result is a kind of silent partnership, not built on submission, but on recognition. Each one acknowledges the other's unbreakable stance and respects it. They don't confuse respect with weakness, and they don't confuse equality with competition. It's a standoff that never explodes, because both men instinctively know that trying to dominate the other would achieve nothing except mutual destruction. This is what makes their interaction so unique. It's not about proving who's stronger, louder, or more ruthless. It's about existing side by side without compromise. Two men who don't bow, don't bend, and don't need to, because the very refusal to submit is the silent handshake that defines their connection. Number 10. The rare exchange of vulnerability. When two Sigma males cross paths, there are moments, rare and fleeting, when the walls come down. Not in the way most people think of vulnerability, with tears and long confessions, but in sharp, stripped-down fragments of truth. A Sigma doesn't open up to just anyone. In fact, most people will never hear the unfiltered weight he carries. But when he meets his equal, there's a recognition that this man, and only this man, might understand what solitude really feels like. Not the Instagram version of being alone, but the lifelong commitment to walking a path no one else follows. This exchange of vulnerability doesn't come from trust in the traditional sense. Trust is too fragile, too conditional. Instead, it comes from a mutual acknowledgement. You know what it costs to live this way, because you pay the same price. That awareness opens a door, just slightly, for truths to slip through. They might talk about the sacrifices, relationships abandoned, opportunities rejected, connections severed for the sake of freedom. They might share the quiet loneliness that comes with being detached from the crowd. And they might even admit, without saying it directly, that sometimes the solitude feels less like strength and more like exile. What makes this rare exchange so profound is its honesty. It isn't dressed up, it isn't exaggerated, and it isn't offered for pity. It's stripped bare, laid out between equals who don't need to dramatize or soften the edges. And because neither sigma is used to being understood, the act of sharing, even in small doses, feels strangely liberating. But the fragility of this moment can't be ignored. Once the exchange ends, the walls go back up. The sigma doesn't linger in vulnerability because he knows it can't become a habit. Even with an equal, too much openness risks dependency, and dependency is poison to his nature. What remains is the echo of the moment itself, a kind of quiet respect for having been able to speak without translation, without judgment, without masks. It's rare, it's brief, and it's never about neediness. It's about recognition. Two men who never bend, never submit, and never confess. Yet for a few seconds they lower the shield because only their equal could ever carry the weight of that silence. Number 11. Silent rivalry for territory. When two sigma males find themselves in the same space, there's an unspoken tension that has nothing to do with raised voices or open competition. It's the silent rivalry for territory, a constant undercurrent of calculation that asks one simple question: whose world is this? Unlike alphas, who announce dominance loudly and demand recognition, sigmas move quietly, almost invisibly. But make no mistake, the negotiation of space still happens. It's just sharper, subtler, and far more strategic. This rivalry isn't about physical land or material possessions, it's about influence, presence, and control of the environment. In a social circle, one sigma may naturally draw the attention of the few people worth engaging with, while the other watches carefully, noting how conversations shift and who drifts into whose orbit. In a workplace, the question becomes, who really sets the tone? Not the one with the title, but the one people subconsciously follow. Even in relationships or shared networks, there's an invisible line being drawn. Which sigma commands the emotional gravity of the room, and which one adjusts around it? The fascinating part is that this rivalry rarely erupts into obvious conflict. Sigmas don't waste time in loud battles for validation. Instead, they calculate like predators, circling each other in silence. One tests by withdrawing to see if his absence changes the flow of the environment. The other asserts by subtly redirecting conversations or setting the pace of interactions. It's a war fought not with volume, but with quiet, deliberate positioning. This creates a tension that others may not even notice, but both sigmas feel it acutely. They're not just watching the room, they're watching each other, measuring influence like invisible territory markers. And because neither man submits easily, the rivalry doesn't resolve quickly. Instead, it simmers, with each encounter adding another layer of silent negotiation. What makes this dynamic unique is that it doesn't always end in hostility. Sometimes equilibrium is reached, where both acknowledge each other's claim without forcing a collapse. Other times, one sigma eventually yields, not out of weakness but out of strategic choice, because wasting energy on a drawn-out standoff isn't worth it. Either way, the rivalry always leaves a mark, because both walked into the same jungle and quietly asked the same question. Only one answer exists: who truly owns the ground we're standing on? Number 12. A fragile brotherhood of outsiders. When two sigma males cross paths, the possibility of brotherhood is both intriguing and unsettling. Unlike most bonds formed in society, theirs doesn't emerge from convenience, constant interaction, or mutual validation. It's something rarer, something almost unnatural, a fragile brotherhood between outsiders. What makes it fragile isn't lack of depth, but the volatile foundation it rests upon, an understanding that they are cut from the same cloth of exile, both rejecting the hierarchies that everyone else seems to worship. This bond isn't built on dependence. In fact, it exists precisely because dependence is absent. Sigmas don't need each other, and they don't seek companionship to fill emotional voids. What draws them together is recognition, the rare acknowledgement that someone else knows what it means to stand apart, to refuse the throne while also refusing servitude. It's a connection forged not in neediness but in the eerie familiarity of solitude. But that same foundation makes the bond dangerous. When two men who bow to no hierarchy walk side by side, the balance is delicate. Neither submits, neither leads, and neither allows himself to be diminished. Outsiders often mistake this for coldness, but it's actually the only way such a bond can survive, built on equality so strict that even a hint of dominance can fracture it instantly. And because of that, the brotherhood is always fragile. One misstep, one betrayal, one moment of imbalance, and the bond collapses with a finality that leaves no room for repair. This isn't a friendship where apologies smooth things over. It's either solid or shattered, no middle ground. That sharp edge is what makes it rare, because very few connections in life carry stakes that high. For outsiders, watching two Sigmas bond is confusing. It looks quiet, minimal, even indifferent, but beneath that stillness lies something deeper. Two exiles finding brief shelter in each other's presence, not to escape solitude, but to momentarily share it. They don't call each other brothers lightly, but when the title is earned, it carries a weight that's nearly unbreakable, until of course it breaks. That's the paradox. The Brotherhood of Outsiders is both one of the rarest alliances a Sigma can form, and one of the easiest to destroy. When a Sigma male meets his equal, it isn't just another encounter. It's a rare collision of forces that rewrites the rules of interaction. No hierarchy, no flattery, no shallow brotherhood. Just raw recognition between two men who see through each other's camouflage. Their connection isn't about admiration, but about pressure. Not about loyalty, but about necessity. Not about noise, but about precision. They test, they clash, they respect, and they walk the razor's edge of a bond that is as rare as it is fragile. This dynamic is a paradox. It's rivalry without hatred, alliance without dependence, brotherhood without chains. It's the quiet understanding that in a world of noise and followers, there are only a few who can stand outside the structure and still carry their own weight. And when those few meet, the air shifts, the balance of power trembles, and evolution is forced on both sides. In the end, what makes this meeting extraordinary isn't what's said or done, but what's understood. Two predators, two outsiders, two men who refuse to kneel, recognizing in each other the very thing the world cannot define. That's why it fascinates, unsettles, and lingers. Because when a Sigma meets his equal, it isn't about victory or defeat. It's about survival of identity, sharpened through recognition. If you found this breakdown powerful, make sure to subscribe to the channel for more brutally honest insights. Don't forget to like the video, drop your thoughts in the comments, and share this with someone who needs to hear it. Trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming next.